I will warm your bed, but can you protect my family? But is it a trap? What if love wasn't just about the person standing beside you, but something or someone from far beyond the stars? What if the one person you were meant to be with didn't even belong to your world? Imagine a night so quiet, so ordinary, that you barely notice the shifting of the universe around you. But then, a message appears out of nowhere. Not from a friend. Not from a family member. But from someone far, far away, someone not human. Someone you can't even begin to understand. What would you do? Would you listen? Would you trust them? This isn't some love story you've seen before. This isn't about falling for the person who walks into your life. It's about falling for someone who was never supposed to be there, a being from another planet, another reality, another time. But the universe is unpredictable. And sometimes, love finds a way no matter how impossible it seems. And now, the question is, would you answer that call? Stay with me, because this journey is about to take a turn you'll never expect. You won't believe what happens next. The sky above Etheria was a silent canvas of stars. But beneath it, the hum of tension buzzed through the dark corridors of the space station. Kai, his boots heavy on the metallic floor, walked down the narrow hallway. His eyes, sharp and focused, scanned the dimly lit walls. The mission wasn't clear yet, but something felt different this time. He paused in front of the briefing room door. His fingers hovered over the panel. Then, a sudden thought, what if this was just another mission? No. This time, it had to be more. The door slid open. Inside, Elysia stood. Her presence filled the room like a cold wind on a still night. Tall. Her skin, pale, almost glowing. Her eyes, deep violet, like two dark pools. Kai didn't know what to think. She wasn't like anyone he had ever encountered. Not human. Not anything he could fully understand. You're late, she said, her voice soft, yet cutting through the silence like a blade. Kai frowned. I wasn't aware we had a schedule. Elysia tilted her head slightly, those intense eyes never leaving his. You'll learn soon enough, she said with a hint of a smile, but it didn't quite reach her eyes. It never did. The tension between them was palpable. Kai could feel it, like a wire stretched taut in the air. He was a soldier, trained to ignore distractions, to focus. But this woman, she was different. He cleared his throat. What's this mission about? Her gaze softened for a moment, but only for a moment. Then she turned, gesturing for him to follow. This isn't a mission, Kai. It's a test. His steps slowed, uncertainty creeping in. A test. Elysia stopped and looked at him, eyes narrowing. To see if you can keep up with the truth. Kai's hand gripped the strap of his bag tighter. And what truth is that? That the stars are not the only thing in the sky, she said, her voice now a whisper, but it echoed in his mind. That the universe is far darker, and more dangerous, than you can imagine. Kai's heart beat faster. This wasn't just another mission. It was the beginning of something he couldn't escape. Elysia stepped forward, so close now that he could feel the faint chill of her presence. Her fingers brushed against his, and for a split second, Kai felt a surge of electricity. The touch, brief but electric, left him standing there, staring at her, wondering what game she was playing. The room was cold, colder than Kai had expected. As Elysia led him deeper into the facility, the hum of technology surrounded them, an artificial atmosphere built to sustain life beyond the stars. But the air felt thicker now, more oppressive. Kai felt it twinge in his chest, a faint sense of unease creeping up his spine. Elysia didn't say a word as they approached the center of the room. There, a large machine stood, its sleek, metallic surface gleaming under the artificial lights. She paused, turning to face him. "This is where we begin," she said quietly, her voice betraying no emotion. Kai's eyes narrowed. "Begin what?" She didn't answer immediately. Instead, she gestured for him to sit in the chair beside the machine. A connection. He had heard rumors about this technology. But no one had told him it was this intense, this invasive. Elysia helped him settle into the chair, the cool metal biting against his skin. She pressed a series of buttons, and the machine whirred to life. "This will hurt." "At first," she said, her voice low, almost soothing. Kai swallowed, tension building in his shoulders. He didn't flinch as the machine's tendrils extended toward him. But he could feel his heart race. What was this? What was Elysia planning? The tendrils of the machine connected to his temples, and everything around him blurred. Suddenly, the world spun. Kai's eyes snapped open, but it wasn't the room that greeted him, it was a field. A vast, empty field of stars. He could hear breathing, but not his own. Elysia's breath. Her presence was everywhere. And then, he saw her. Standing just a few feet away. Her eyes were no longer just violet, they glowed with an intensity that seemed to reach into him. He opened his mouth to speak, but no sound came out. He wasn't in his body anymore. He was inside her mind. Inside her thoughts. "You feel it, don't you?" she asked, her voice echoing around him. It was both close and distant, like it was coming from the deepest part of his soul. The connection. The bond. Kai stood frozen, overwhelmed by the flood of emotions rushing through him. It was as if he could feel her memories, her fears, and her deepest desires. All of it crashing against his consciousness. Her pain. Her loneliness. Her struggle to survive. The connection deepened. Elysia stepped closer. He could feel the warmth of her, feel her heartbeat even though they were still in the realm of thoughts. Then, her fingers brushed against his skin, and he felt it. A spark. A surge of energy unlike anything he had ever experienced. This wasn't just a connection of minds. This was something far deeper. Something he didn't know how to control. "You're not alone anymore," she whispered, the words vibrating in the air. "You never were. Not with me." He wanted to pull away. To fight the feeling. But he couldn't. The bond between them was too strong. Too real. The world around him shifted, the stars spinning faster, and he felt himself being pulled back into his body. Kai gasped as the machine withdrew its tendrils. The room came back into focus. He blinked, trying to adjust. Elysia stood before him, waiting. Her face unreadable. How long was that?" he asked, his voice hoarse, as if he had been holding his breath for an eternity. She didn't answer immediately. She simply watched him with those piercing eyes. "Time doesn't exist the same way here," she said softly, her voice carrying a strange, haunting depth. "You are with me now, Kai. Always." Kai swallowed hard, the weight of the moment pressing down on him. He felt dizzy, disoriented. But beneath it all, there was something else. Something he couldn't ignore. A connection that wasn't just about shared memories. It was about something more. something that could change everything. And as much as he tried to deny it, he knew it was true. The world around Kai faded again, this time slower than before. He felt his body being pulled into a new dimension, a place where the boundaries between mind and matter blurred. His eyes snapped open, but it wasn't the dark room of Etheria he saw. It was something else. A vast, endless expanse. A swirling galaxy of stars, like shimmering particles suspended in an endless void. It was beautiful, haunting, nothing like the cold, sterile confines of the space station. Kai felt both disoriented and strangely at peace. And then, there was Elysia. Standing before him, bathed in the glow of distant stars, her form barely visible as she seemed to float in the cosmic silence. "You've never been here before," she said softly, her voice like a whisper in the wind. Kai's chest tightened. "Where are we?" "Inside me," she answered simply. "Inside my mind." The realization hit him hard. He wasn't just connected to her thoughts, he was inside her world. This place was born from her memories, her essence, and yet it felt oddly familiar. The air was thick with her emotions, a mix of loneliness, strength, and an overwhelming sense of longing. Elysia moved towards him, her eyes glowing even brighter now. They weren't just violet, they were infinite, as if he could lose himself in their depths. "I wanted to show you," she said. "The part of me you can't see, the one that's hidden deep." Kai stood frozen, staring at her, overwhelmed by the weight of her presence. He wasn't sure whether it was fear or something else that made his heart race. Maybe it was the sheer intimacy of the moment, the knowledge that they were completely exposed to each other, connected in ways that defied reason. "You have no idea what it's like," Elysia continued, her voice quieter now, "to carry the weight of so many lives. So many memories, all wrapped into one being. To never be truly alone, yet always feel like you are." She reached out, her hand gliding through the air towards him. The moment her fingers touched his, an electric charge shot through him. It wasn't physical, but it felt more real than anything Kai had ever experienced. He could feel everything she felt. Her pain, her longing, her regret. It overwhelmed him. "You're not alone either, Kai," she whispered. "Not anymore." He tried to speak, to respond, but the words caught in his throat. He couldn't say anything. He was caught in the web of their shared consciousness, unable to break free from the connection. The world around them shifted again, the stars swirling faster, the space between them closing. Her lips were so close now, he could almost feel them. Her breath was warm, soft against his skin, though there was no air here to breathe. It didn't matter. In this moment, it was just them, just Kai and Elysia. The tension between them was thick, like a storm building in the distance. And just as Kai felt like he might lose himself entirely, Elysia gently pulled away. "This is what it means," she said softly. "To truly understand another person. To see them, not just with your eyes, but with your soul." Kai's heart hammered in his chest, and for the first time, he felt the full weight of their bond. It wasn't just a connection, it was a partnership, a union of minds and hearts that neither of them could escape. "I didn't ask for this," he murmured, almost to himself. Elysia looked at him, her expression unreadable. "Neither did I," she replied. "But it's real now. And so are we." The stars around them shimmered, the dream fading into darkness. Kai awoke with a start, gasping for air. His chest rose and fell rapidly, the weight of the experience still pressing on his lungs. The cold metal of the chair beneath him grounded him back in reality. Elysia was standing over him, her face calm, unreadable. Her eyes still held that depth, but now there was something else, something softer, like she had shared a part of herself with him that no one else had ever seen. "Did you feel it?" she asked, her voice low. Kai nodded slowly, still trying to process everything. The connection. The dream. Her, his, their souls entwined. "Yeah. I felt it." Elysia's lips curved into the faintest of smiles. "Then we're ready. The real mission begins now." The silence in the room was deafening. Kai sat still, his mind racing. The connection he had shared with Elysia was unlike anything he had ever experienced. It was a bond forged not through words, but through emotions, through a deep, unspoken understanding. And yet, as powerful as it was, there was still a question lingering in the back of his mind. What did it all mean? He looked at Elysia, standing across the room. Her presence filled the space, not just with her physical form, but with the weight of everything she had shared with him. Her glowing violet eyes were softer now, a hint of vulnerability hidden behind them. "You've never been this close to someone before, have you?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Kai hesitated. It wasn't a question he had the answer to. Close wasn't something he was accustomed to. Not like this. "No," he admitted, his voice low. "Not like this." Elysia took a step closer, her movements graceful and deliberate. The air between them felt thick, charged with an energy neither of them could ignore. She stopped just in front of him, her gaze steady as she studied him, as if seeing him for the first time. "You don't have to say anything," she murmured, her hand reaching out to gently touch his arm. The contact sent a shockwave through him, like electricity coursing through his veins. It wasn't just physical, it was deeper. It was their connection, their bond, now palpable in the air around them. Kai could feel her emotions, her thoughts, swirling in his mind, as though they were his own. The fear, the strength, the loneliness, all of it was there, raw and unfiltered. But now, there was something else. Something that neither of them had been able to admit. This bond, Elysia," Kai started, his voice faltering for the first time, "it's real. It's not just in our minds." Elysia's eyes softened, and she nodded slowly. "It is real. It's always been real." Her voice was calm, but there was an edge to it now, something almost fragile in her tone. "You feel it, don't you? The truth that we're bound in a way no one else can understand." Kai swallowed hard. He did feel it. More than just the connection, more than just shared thoughts. He felt her presence inside him, like a part of him was suddenly entwined with hers. And it terrified him. It made him feel like he had no control over his own emotions, his own mind. The room felt smaller now, as though the walls were closing in on him. He could feel his pulse quicken, his breath shallow. He wanted to pull away, to escape the intensity of it all, but the bond held him in place. And in that moment, he knew that no matter how much he wanted to run, he couldn't. "Why didn't you tell me?" Kai finally asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "Why didn't you tell me how deep this connection really goes?" Elysia exhaled, her breath shaky. "I didn't think you were ready." Her hand slid gently down his arm, the touch tender, but full of meaning. "I had to wait, for you to see it, to feel it. Only then could I show you the truth." Kai's heart pounded as he reached out, his hand trembling as he placed it over hers. The moment their hands touched, a flood of emotions rushed through him. Fear, yes. But also something else. Something softer. Acceptance. The same fear that had kept him distant from others was now the very thing that tied him to Elysia. "I don't know if I'm ready," he said, his voice hoarse, the weight of his words heavy in the room. Elysia didn't pull away. Instead, she gave a soft, almost imperceptible smile. "You will be. We both will be. Because we're in this together, Kai." Her words, quiet but resolute, settled into his chest, grounding him. And for the first time in a long time, Kai didn't feel so alone. Elysia's eyes softened, and she stepped closer again. This time, there was no hesitation. She closed the distance between them, lifting her hand to his face, cupping his jaw gently. Her touch was light, but it was real. In that moment, Kai felt everything: her care, her vulnerability, and the trust she was offering him. And without thinking, he leaned into her touch, his forehead gently resting against hers. The world outside ceased to exist. There was only this moment, this fragile, tender connection between them. For a brief second, there was no war. No mission. Just two people, bound together in a way neither could fully explain. But they didn't need to. "I won't let you go," Kai whispered, the words escaping before he even realized what he was saying. Elysia didn't answer with words. She simply closed her eyes and leaned into him, her breath steady and calm. And in that silence, Kai finally understood. The bond they shared was not just about the mission. It was about something deeper. Something that transcended the stars themselves. The alarms blared to life, their shrill sound piercing through the quiet of the station. Kai's heart skipped a beat as he jumped to his feet. The atmosphere in the control room had shifted in an instant, the once still air now thick with urgency. Something was wrong. "Elysia," he shouted, turning towards her. But she was already moving. She didn't hesitate, didn't need to. Her eyes had hardened, the warmth of their shared connection replaced with the cold focus of a soldier. She had known this was coming. "Get to the command center," she ordered, her voice low and steady, yet there was an underlying tension in it. "We've been compromised." Kai didn't need to ask who we was. It was Etheria. The mission, their home, their lives, all of it was in jeopardy. His stomach tightened as he moved to follow her, his feet hitting the ground with force, but the moment felt like slow motion. They rushed through the narrow hallways of Etheria, their footsteps echoing in the vast emptiness. Every corner they turned, the pressure seemed to grow. Kai could feel it, something larger than just the attack. A sense of impending loss, as if this would be the moment everything changed. Elysia didn't speak again, but Kai could feel the weight of her thoughts, her fear bleeding into his. He wanted to say something, wanted to comfort her, but there was no time for that. Not now. They reached the command center, and as they entered, the doors slammed shut behind them. The room was in chaos. Officers scrambled, trying to coordinate, trying to make sense of the information flooding in. The bright lights flickered, casting sharp shadows across the room, adding to the growing sense of unease. Kai's eyes scanned the room, landing on Zara, who was at a terminal in the corner. Her face was grim, but there was something else there too: determination. "They're already inside the system," Zara said, barely looking up as she typed furiously. "They're using a virus to take control of our defenses." "How long until we lose control?" Elysia asked, her tone clipped, her eyes fixed on the holographic display in front of them. "Minutes," Zara replied without hesitation. "Maybe less." Kai could feel the weight of those words sinking into him. Minutes. They had minutes to save Etheria or everything would be lost. He turned to Elysia, searching her face for something. Anything. But she was unreadable, her eyes locked on the screens, scanning the data with a speed that seemed impossible. She was the only one who could help them now, but the question still lingered in the back of his mind: could they trust her? "Do you have a plan?" he asked, trying to keep his voice steady. She glanced at him, her expression unreadable. Then, in a voice so calm it felt almost wrong in such a chaotic moment, she said, "I do." Elysia's fingers flew across the terminal, connecting with the central system. Kai watched her, wondering just how much of this was in her control. How much was she willing to sacrifice to keep them alive? He wasn't sure, but he couldn't afford to question it now. There was too much at stake. The tension in the room was palpable. Kai stood, his muscles coiled, ready to spring into action, but he couldn't shake the feeling that something was missing. Etheria wasn't just in danger, it was as if everything they had worked for, everything they had built, was collapsing around them. And then, a voice crackled over the intercom. A voice he didn't recognize. "Your time is up," the voice said, cold and mocking. "We've already won." Kai's blood ran cold as the screen before them flickered to life, showing a live feed of the intruders' masked figures, their faces hidden. They were inside Etheria. "What do we do now?" Kai asked, turning to Elysia. His voice was barely a whisper, but it carried the weight of 1,000 thoughts. Elysia's expression didn't change. She stepped forward, her hand resting gently on the terminal, as if drawing strength from it. "Now," she said, "we fight." Before Kai could react, she turned to Zara and the rest of the team. "Prepare the countermeasures. I'm going in." The room seemed to freeze. Every eye turned to Elysia, disbelief flashing across their faces. But she didn't wait for confirmation. She was already moving, her steps fast and decisive. Kai's heart raced. He didn't know what had just happened. But something inside him told him that this was the moment. He couldn't let Elysia face this alone. Not after everything they had shared. He had to trust her. They had to trust each other. "Wait," he called out, running after her. "I'm coming with you." Elysia didn't look back, but her voice rang out across the hallway. "You already are." Kai stood at the control center, watching as the holographic screens flickered and flashed with incoming data. His mind raced, trying to process everything that had just unfolded. The station was under attack, but there was something deeper happening. Elysia was at the heart of it all, but Kai knew something in his gut told him that the battle they were about to face wasn't just physical. The connection between them was growing stronger, pulsing with each moment that passed. It was as if their souls were awakening, reacting to the imminent danger. Elysia was calm. Too calm. Her fingers moved swiftly across the terminal, her eyes glowing with an almost ethereal light. But beneath that calm exterior, Kai could feel the fear that she was trying so desperately to suppress. He knew her better now. Her pain, her strength, it was all there, woven into every action, every thought. He stepped toward her, his boots echoing against the metal floor. "What's really going on, Elysia?" His voice was low, but the urgency was clear. Elysia didn't turn to face him immediately. Instead, she finished what she was doing, the sharp sound of her fingers on the keys almost rhythmic. She paused, letting the silence stretch between them. Finally, she spoke. "I've been hiding the truth from you, Kai," she said softly, but the weight of her words hung in the air. The attack, it's just the beginning. Kai's pulse quickened. What are you talking about? Her eyes finally met his. The glow in them flickered, as if something deep inside her was awakening something dark and ancient. I'm not just a soldier. I'm the key to something much larger than Etheria. And this connection between us? It's not just some side effect of the mission, it's a bond forged by destiny. Kai stared at her, trying to make sense of her words. Destiny? You're saying this was all planned? Elysia nodded slowly, her expression unreadable. Long ago, my people, they created the Etheria station as a place to hide, to prepare for what's coming. And now it's time to face what we've been running from. Kai's mind reeled. Everything had felt so much simpler before. The mission, the connection, it was all part of something greater, something they couldn't have anticipated. And what is it that's coming? He asked, his voice barely above a whisper. The station's alarms blared again, interrupting the tense silence. Elysia's face hardened as the emergency lights flickered to life. It's not just the station, Kai, she said, her voice tinged with something darker now. It's me. I've been holding something inside me, a power I didn't even fully understand until now. It's waking up, and I can't control it, not yet. Before Kai could react, the walls around them began to hum, a low vibration that seemed to resonate deep within his chest. He felt it too, the power, pulsing through the air, electric and raw. It was like the station itself was alive, reacting to the growing energy. Kai's hand instinctively reached for Elysia's arm, gripping it tightly. She looked at him, her eyes wide with a mixture of fear and determination. Elysia, Kai said, his voice steady despite the rising tension, we can do this together. Whatever's coming, we face it together. Her eyes softened for a brief moment. But then, a sudden wave of energy slammed into them, sending a shockwave through the room. Kai stumbled back, his breath knocked out of him. The walls buckled and groaned as if they were about to collapse, but Elysia was already standing tall, her expression one of fierce resolve. It's starting, she said, more to herself than to him. Kai pushed himself to his feet, his body still humming with the residual energy. He turned to look at Elysia, who was now standing at the center of the room, her hands raised, drawing power from the very air around them. Her form seemed to shimmer, flickering between the physical and something else entirely. You need to stop this, Kai said, rushing to her side. You can't do this alone. Elysia shook her head. I can't stop it? Not now. The only way to save Etheria, to stop them, is to embrace it. She turned to face him, her eyes filled with a strange light. Kai, you don't understand. The bond we share, it's the key. You and I, together, can control this. But I need you to trust me. Completely. Kai hesitated, but the urgency in her voice, the depth of their connection, it was undeniable. He nodded, taking a deep breath. I trust you, he said. Always. With a final glance, Elysia closed her eyes, and the energy around them surged. The power within her flared to life, and for a moment, the world seemed to stop. There was no sound, no movement, just the overwhelming pulse of energy that seemed to fill every inch of space. Then, with a sudden burst, the energy shot outward, breaking through the station's defenses, sending shock waves across the entire structure. The walls shook as if the very foundation of Etheria was being torn apart. But as the energy flooded the station, Kai felt a strange calm wash over him. Elysia's presence, her power, it was no longer just her power. It was theirs. The station trembled beneath them, the walls groaning under the pressure of the energy that was now fully unleashed. Kai could feel it, the pulse of power racing through his veins, the air heavy with an electric charge. But it wasn't just the station that was trembling. He was shaking too, his heart pounding in his chest as he tried to process what was happening. Elysia stood before him, her eyes closed, her hands still outstretched, drawing the energy around them into herself. She was becoming something more, her form flickering between human and something else entirely. It was as though she was shedding her past, becoming the very force of nature she had kept hidden for so long. And Kai was right there with her. He felt her, felt their connection deepen, and as much as it terrified him, he couldn't deny it. He had become part of her, and she part of him. His breath hitched as the world around them seemed to collapse in on itself. The station was no longer just a place. It had become a living entity, responding to Elysia's will and the bond they shared. The air crackled with energy, the very fabric of the station's structure bending and warping under the force. Kai, Elysia whispered, her voice barely audible over the roar of the storm that raged around them. Her voice was different now, darker, more intense. But there was still a thread of humanity woven through it. This is it. The fusion. You're inside me, and I'm inside you. He reached out, his fingers brushing hers, and a jolt of raw, unfiltered power surged between them. It wasn't just physical, it was something deeper. Their minds, their hearts, their souls, they were now one. Kai couldn't speak. There were no words for what he was feeling. But as the power surged through him, he realized something that made his heart ache with a strange, bittersweet clarity. He didn't want to be anywhere else. No matter how dangerous, how uncertain their path had become, he wanted to be here, with her. Elysia's eyes opened slowly, their violet glow pulsing with the energy that coursed through her. She was no longer the same woman he had met. She was something beyond that, something ancient, something powerful. And yet, as their gazes locked, he saw a flicker of the same vulnerability that had drawn him to her in the first place. "It's time," she said, her voice now a mere echo of the power she wielded. "I can control it, Kai, but I need you. We need to do this together." Kai nodded, his resolve hardening. He had no idea what would happen next, but he understood one thing. Whatever it was going to require all of them. Together. The walls of Etheria flickered, images of strange landscapes and alien worlds flashing before them. The very fabric of space itself was bending, warping under the force of their power. It was like staring into the abyss of the universe, but instead of fear, Kai felt an overwhelming sense of connection, of belonging. Elysia raised her arms higher, and the energy around them intensified, the air crackling as the station's systems overloaded with the sheer amount of power being channeled. Kai stepped forward, his hand now firmly placed on hers. The bond between them flared to life, the energy pulsing like a heartbeat, syncing them together. For a moment, there was silence. Then, a flash of blinding light and everything went still. When Kai opened his eyes, the world was different. Etheria was still there, but the station was no longer the cold, metallic structure it had once been. Now, it pulsed with a life of its own. The walls shimmered with energy, the atmosphere hums with power. It was as though the station had become part of them, as if it was alive and breathing in tandem with their bond. Elysia stood beside him, her form fully human once again, but there was something indescribable about her now. She was no longer just a soldier or a woman with extraordinary abilities. She was something greater, something that couldn't be confined by mere labels. "We did it," she whispered, her voice filled with awe, but there was also a deep sadness there, as if the cost of their success was too high to truly comprehend. Kai didn't speak immediately. He simply took her hand again, his heart beating in sync with hers. They had done it together, but at what cost? The bond they shared had transformed them, but what was left of their past selves? The station's lights flickered one last time, and Kai could feel the tension in the air begin to lift, replaced by a strange, new calm. "Where do we go from here?" Kai asked softly, his voice thick with emotion. It was a question that didn't have an immediate answer, but it didn't matter. Because for the first time since their journey began, Kai realized that the next step didn't have to be taken alone. Elysia squeezed his hand tightly. "Wherever the stars take us," she said, her eyes locked with his. "Together." And in that moment, Kai knew that no matter the challenges ahead, they would face them together, united, as one. The stillness didn't last long. The power that had surged through Etheria was still rippling through the station, its aftershocks felt in the very core of the structure. Kai and Elysia stood together, the weight of their bond still settling between them. But as the silence stretched, the reality of what they had done began to hit. Elysia's hand, still in Kai's, trembled slightly, and Kai could feel it. The immense energy they had unleashed had left its mark on her. He wanted to ask if she was all right, but he already knew the answer. No one could wield that kind of power without paying a price. The station hummed, its systems stabilizing, but it wasn't the same. The lights flickered as the artificial atmosphere began to adapt to the new energy signature that had taken hold. The walls were no longer just metal and wire, they were infused with the power of their souls, and something told Kai that this fusion wasn't something that would ever be undone. "Are you okay?" Kai asked, his voice soft but filled with concern. Elysia's eyes fluttered, and for a moment, she seemed distant. The faint glow in her eyes was still there, but it wasn't as sharp as it had been before. The raw power that had coursed through her was now settling, melding with her very being. She nodded slowly, but her expression was guarded. "I will be." Kai didn't press further. He could feel the weight of her words, she wasn't fine. The energy that had flowed through them both wasn't just a gift, it was a curse too. It had changed them. Maybe irrevocably. A sharp beeping sound broke through the silence, and a holographic screen flickered to life in front of them. Kai's heart skipped a beat as he saw the message displayed across the screen. "Incoming signal." "Who is it?" Kai asked, his gaze shifting to Elysia. "I don't know," Elysia murmured, but her expression had shifted. There was unease in her eyes now. "It's not anyone I've ever heard of." The screen blinked again, and then a distorted image appeared. A man, his face half shrouded in shadow, stared back at them through the glitching feed. His voice crackled through the speakers, cold and calculated. "You've done well, Elysia," the man said, his voice like gravel. "But you're far from finished. The power you've unleashed? It's just the beginning." Kai's instincts flared. This man was dangerous, he could feel it. His mind raced, trying to piece together who he might be. But it was clear from the tone of his voice, the deliberate slowness of his words, that he had control over the situation. "We knew you'd come," Elysia said, her voice steady but tinged with something Kai couldn't quite place. She took a step forward, as if ready to face whatever was next. The man's laugh echoed, hollow and mirthless. "Did you? You think you've won, but what you've done has set into motion a chain of events you can't stop. The Alliance will never let you keep the station, Elysia." It's time for the reckoning. Kai glanced at Elysia, his brow furrowing. The reckoning, he repeated, his voice low. Not just the Alliance, the man continued, his image flickering more violently now. Others are watching. Others who will stop at nothing to reclaim what you've stolen. Kai could see the tension in Elysia's shoulders. She wasn't shocked, but the words still hit her like a punch. She turned back to Kai, meeting his gaze. The bond between them flared again, but this time it wasn't just emotional, it was as if they were beginning to understand each other more deeply than ever. "Do you trust me?" she asked him, her voice barely a whisper. Kai didn't hesitate. "With everything." Her lips curled into the faintest of smiles, but it was quickly replaced by a hard edge. "Then we fight. Together." The man on the screen sneered, the image glitching out once more. "You don't have a choice, Elysia. It's over." The transmission abruptly cut off, leaving only the buzz of the dead air between them. Kai felt the silence press down on him. It was one thing to face an unknown enemy, but this was different. This was personal. "Who was that?" Kai asked, his gaze still locked on the blank screen. "Someone from my past," Elysia replied, her voice colder now. "Someone who knows what I've done, and what I'm capable of. We need to be ready for what's coming." Kai could feel the resolve harden in her. There was no turning back. They had crossed a line, and now they would have to face the consequences. Whatever reckoning was coming, it wasn't just a fight for the station. It was a fight for their survival, for everything they had become. Elysia stepped away from the screen, her expression now a mixture of determination and something deeper regret. She didn't want this fight, but it was inevitable. And Kai knew that, no matter the cost, they would have to face it together. "I'm with you," Kai said, his voice strong, unwavering. "No matter what." Elysia nodded, and in that moment, the weight of their bond felt heavier than ever. It wasn't just their power that was at stake anymore. It was their future, and everything they had built together. The station hummed louder, its energy now synchronized with theirs. It was as if Etheria itself had become a living being, ready to fight for its survival. And Kai and Elysia were the ones who had to lead the charge. "We move now," Elysia said, her tone sharp and commanding. "Let's show them what we're capable of." Kai followed her without question. They were ready. They had no choice but to fight. The corridors of Etheria were eerily quiet, the usual hum of the station's systems now replaced by the sound of their hurried footsteps. Kai and Elysia moved swiftly, their pace synchronized, the weight of the threat hanging over them. They could feel it, the darkness closing in. Kai's mind was racing. The message from the mysterious figure had shaken him, but it had also steeled his resolve. They didn't have much time. The station was vulnerable, and the reckoning had already begun. "What's our next move?" Kai asked, his voice steady but filled with urgency. His hand was resting on the weapon at his side, ready for whatever was to come. They had no idea what kind of force they were up against, but one thing was certain, this would be their final stand. Elysia didn't answer immediately. She was focused, her eyes scanning the terminal ahead of them. Her fingers flew across the screen, bringing up the security feeds. But the feeds flickered in and out of view, the systems still adjusting to the immense energy that had surged through them. "They're here," Elysia finally said, her voice tight. "They've breached the outer defenses." Kai felt his pulse quicken. The last line of defense was gone. They were now vulnerable. "They won't stop," she continued, her voice hardening. "We've been targeted for a reason." Whoever they are, they know exactly what we can do. And they'll use everything at their disposal to destroy us. Kai's grip tightened on his weapon. Then we fight. Elysia didn't respond, but her eyes met his. There was a fierce resolve in them now, but also something else, a quiet acceptance. She knew the cost. They both did. As they moved deeper into the station, the gravity of the situation became more apparent. The walls trembled slightly, as if the station itself was holding its breath. The lights flickered and hummed with the power of the energy that had been unleashed, but they were far from stable. It was only a matter of time before the energy core could no longer handle the strain. "We need to get to the core," Elysia said suddenly. "If we can stabilize the energy, we might stand a chance against them." Kai nodded, his expression grim. They both knew that the energy core was the heart of the station. If it failed, Etheria would be lost, and they would be left with no way to fight back. They pushed forward, their steps echoing in the dimly lit corridors. There was no time for hesitation, no time for doubt. Every corner they turned, the station seemed to close in on them, as if the very walls were pushing them toward their fate. Suddenly, the door in front of them slammed open with a force that knocked both of them off balance. Kai instinctively reached for his weapon, but before he could act, the figure in the doorway raised a hand. "You're too late," the voice said, cold and menacing. A tall figure, dressed in dark armor, stepped into the room, flanked by several others. Their faces were obscured, but the glint of their weapons was unmistakable. Kai's eyes narrowed. "Who are you?" The leader of the group stepped forward, his voice dripping with malice. "We are the ones who will take back what's ours. You've already seen what we can do." He smirked, and Kai could feel the darkness of his presence, the sheer weight of the man's power. Elysia stepped forward, standing firm beside Kai. "You don't know who you're dealing with," she said, her voice sharp, but her body was tense. The bond between her and Kai pulsed, a low hum beneath the tension in the air. "You won't win this." "Oh, we will," the man said. "You've given us the means to control everything. You've unleashed something you can't possibly control." The tension in the air was thick, almost suffocating. Kai's hand gripped his weapon tightly. He could feel the surge of power within him, the connection to Elysia, their bond growing stronger by the second. "I won't let you destroy the station," Kai said, his voice low and steady. The leader's smile faded. "You don't have a choice. This isn't about the station. This is about you." He raised his hand, and the air around them seemed to ripple, like a distorted wave of energy. Before Kai could react, the energy blast shot toward them, but Elysia was already moving. Her body shimmered, the energy around her crackling with the power she was now wielding. She stepped between Kai and the blast, raising her hand, and the blast halted mid-air, suspended in time. The man's eyes widened. "No, this isn't possible." Elysia's voice was cold, like ice. "You don't understand, do you? This power? It's not yours to control." With a flick of her wrist, she redirected the energy back toward them, the blast exploding in a brilliant flash of light. The leader was thrown back, his body slamming against the wall, and the rest of the group scattered, retreating into the shadows. Kai stood in stunned silence, his breath coming in quick gasps. The power surging between him and Elysia was unlike anything he had ever felt. Together, they were unstoppable. But they both knew the fight wasn't over. "We have to stop them," Kai said, his voice hardening with resolve. Elysia nodded, her gaze never leaving the darkened corridor. "This is only the beginning. They'll come again." but we're ready. Together, they moved forward united, knowing that the final battle was upon them. The reckoning had begun, but now, for the first time, Kai and Elysia weren't facing it alone. The silence in the corridor was deafening. The remnants of the explosion echoed in the distance, the energy still crackling through the station's systems. But amidst the chaos, Kai and Elysia stood together, their resolve unbroken. The enemy had been repelled for now, but they both knew this battle was far from over. Kai turned to Elysia, his eyes searching hers. Her face was determined, yet there was a weariness there too. The energy she had unleashed, the power they had drawn together, it was taking its toll on her. Her form shimmered slightly, the intensity of their bond almost overwhelming. "You okay?" Kai asked, his voice softer than before. Elysia nodded, but there was a flicker of doubt in her eyes. "I'll be fine. But this is just the beginning. They won't stop coming. They're relentless." Kai took a step closer, his hand brushing against hers. He could feel her pulse beneath his fingertips, the shared energy between them thrumming through his body. "We'll stop them," he said firmly. Together. The walls of Etheria seemed to pulse with life, vibrating as the station continued to stabilize. The energy that had once been a wild, uncontrollable force was now contained, but just barely. The core of the station was still at risk. The Alliance or whoever these people were hadn't shown their full hand yet. The worst was yet to come. "We need to find out who's behind this," Elysia said, her voice hardening with resolve. "If we can cut off the head, we can stop this before it escalates." Kai nodded. "Agreed. But we don't know who they are or how many more there are. We're walking into the unknown here." Elysia's eyes darkened. "I've been there before. This time, we won't make the same mistakes." They moved quickly through the hallways, the station's corridors still echoing with the sounds of chaos. The holographic screens that lined the walls flickered intermittently, showing fragments of data, enemy movements, and the steady rise in the power levels across Etheria. As they neared the central command hub, the doors slid open, revealing a room filled with flashing lights and holographic displays. Zara, the technician who had worked with them earlier, was at a console, her face etched with worry. "They're here," Zara said, her voice tense. "The enemy is preparing to strike again. We don't have much time." Kai stepped forward, his gaze fixed on the screen in front of Zara. A map of the station appeared, showing multiple red blips, intruders closing in on key points. "We need to evacuate the civilians," Kai said, his voice low but commanding. "Get them to the safe zone. We'll handle the rest." Elysia's hand found his, a brief but reassuring touch. "We won't let them take Etheria," she said, her voice a promise. Zara nodded, quickly relaying the orders to the rest of the team. She turned back to Kai and Elysia. "It's going to be a full-scale assault. You'll need all the help you can get." Kai's hand tightened around the weapon at his side. He glanced at Elysia, who was already moving toward the central control panel. She was tapping commands rapidly, preparing the station's defenses. But even as they made their final preparations, Kai couldn't shake the feeling that something was missing. The true nature of their enemies, the ones who had sent the initial message, was still unclear. And with each passing second, the danger was rising. "We can't let them breach the core," Elysia said, looking up at Kai, her face set in determination. "If they get to the core, it's over." Kai nodded, a spark of adrenaline coursing through his veins. He felt the power between him and Elysia, their shared bond, anchoring him. Together, They had faced the unknown before. Now, they had to do it again. And they would not fail. The doors to the command hub slammed open, and the enemy forces poured in, their dark figures illuminated by the flashing red lights of the emergency alarms. Kai and Elysia were ready. The station trembled again, but this time, it was different. The air felt alive with the energy of their combined will. Kai's heart beat in sync with Elysia's, their connection as strong as the very foundation of Etheria itself. With a swift motion, Elysia raised her hand, and the energy that had once been wild and uncontrollable was now focused, a weapon they could wield together. "Now," she said, her voice ringing out with authority. "Let's end this." In that moment, the power between them surged, a blinding wave of energy that shot through the command center. The walls shook, the very air vibrating with their combined strength. The enemy forces faltered, unable to stand against the intensity of the attack. And then, with a final surge of power, the enemy forces were repelled, their resistance crushed by the sheer force of Kai and Elysia's bond. Breathing heavily, Kai looked at Elysia, their eyes locking in silent understanding. They had won for now. The reckoning had been fought, but the war was far from over. Together, Kai whispered, the weight of the battle still pressing down on him, but the relief of victory now flooding through him. "We did it." Elysia's lips curved into a small, weary smile. "We did." But even as they stood victorious, Kai knew this was only the beginning. The galaxy was vast, and there were still many unknowns out there. More enemies, more challenges, and more questions that needed answers. But for now, they had each other. And with that, they would face whatever came next. Together. They said it could never happen. A love so impossible across galaxies, across time. But here we are, standing together, after everything. We fought for this, for each other. But the battle isn't over. This is just the beginning. What we've learned, what we've discovered, it's not the end of the story, but the start of a new chapter. But what about the real cost of this love? Will it survive the forces pulling at it? And what does the universe have in store for us next? The galaxy isn't done with us yet. So ask yourself this: can love truly defy the laws of space and time? Are we meant to defy destiny, or are we just pawns in a much larger game? The answers are coming. But for now, let me leave you with this: if love is stronger than the stars, what happens when we push the boundaries of the universe? Are you ready for the next part of this journey? Hit the like button, comment below and tell me what you think. The story isn't over. It's just beginning. And remember, we're just getting started. Don't blink. You won't want to miss what comes next.